Well, thank you everyone for joining our Flourishing in Ministry webinar series that's hosted by APU's Center for Vocational Ministry, where our purpose is to help cultivate resilience in ministry students and leaders through research, resources, and relationships in order to equip ministry leaders for a lifetime of healthy, joyous, fruitful ministry. That's our purpose here. And this morning we're privileged to have Dr. Catherine Hart Weber with us to share one particular component part of our Flourishing in Ministry model that's informed by the research out of Notre Dame, also by the name Flourishing in Ministry. I get to say that phrase a lot. Our fearless leader here at CVM, Dr. Chris Adams, is speaking on this model to another group of pastors this morning. So everyone here gets the other Chris to serve as host, me, Chris Neal, who's a director in the center. A few colleagues from our team on the call as well, Reverend Freddie Rivers, Reverend Dr. Dick Pritchard, and Shante Lopez, soon to be MDiv Shante Lopez in the coming months. So, as well as a handful of our Flourishing Ministry coaches here as well. This morning we get to hear from Dr. Catherine Hart Weber. She's a wife, mother, grandmother, therapist, life coach, and spiritual director. She's the founder of the Flourish Center for Wellbeing, where she offers retreats, coaching training, spiritual formation groups around mental health and Christian spiritual formation. She has her master's and PhD from Fuller Theological Seminary and their School of Theology. She teaches on the personal life of the leader at seminaries. And she also is a Benedictine Oblate, and her most recent book is Flourish, which we highly recommend. Our time this morning, Catherine's going to share for about 25-30 minutes, and then we're going to close our time with some Q&A that will be facilitated by Freddie Rivas. So throughout the time, feel free to put questions in the chat. You can send them directly to Freddie, or just put them in the chat for everyone to see. And then that's how we'll spend our time this morning. So thank you so much for being here. Allow me to pray, and then I'll hand it over to Catherine. So, Father, thank you so much for this opportunity to be together with sisters and brothers who are serving you, who are equipping your body in this world to be your body in this world, to be a sign, instrument, and foretaste of your coming kingdom. Help us to experience your joy, your wellness, God, as we serve you well, God. And I pray for this time that we would bring light to our eyes about how we can be resilient in this moment, for this time, for our neighbor, God, and to see your kingdom come. So bless Catherine as she shares with us this morning. Praise in your name. Amen.
Amen. Thanks so much, Chris, for that welcome, and welcome everybody. I can't see all your faces. I've tried to look at the gallery and see some of you, and some of you are familiar, and hello. And to those of you who I have not seen before, welcome. So good to be with you and to share this time. I'm going to do a screen share and share with you a PowerPoint presentation, and this will be available in a PDF file. So just be present, make notes, please. Make notes of how God is speaking to you as we go, but this will be available for you so you can relax and just be present to our time. This was the beautiful image that was in the email that was sent to you, inviting you to be part of this this time. And I love the ferns growing through the rocks and coming out. I really like the botanical analogies for resilience. But this is the image that I chose, and it felt a little more fitting for the concept of resilience that I actually identify with. Living in the Southern California area, we have a lot of palm trees, and I enjoy Hawaii. Hawaii is a happy place for me. And so the palm trees are an incredible image of being blown in the wind in the storms of life. And this word resilience and this concept actually has been the theme for 2020 and 21 many blogs, many articles, a lot of teaching series and sermons. It is even for the spring issue of Oprah magazine, it's titled The Art of Resilience. So we are seeing this concept being really something a lot of people are resonating with, and something that has been considered the hopeful and the necessary, powerful word right now to help us move forward. And so I have been geeking out on reading articles and listening to teachings and immersing myself in this, receiving tremendously for my own life, but also in flowing forward to you and for such a time as this. So I'm going to share with you as much as I can in the short time that we have together. But let's start with resilience defined. When we look at the dictionary, or we look at psychological conceptualization of this term resilience, it's the process and ability of recovering, adapting, and adjusting well in the face of change and adversity, tragedy, loss, threats, or significant sources of stress. Just situations of not being able to control events or people. And does that sound like anything anyone's been going through or seen going on around you? Another concept is elasticity, the concept of like a rubber band being stretched too far and bouncing back, that we have this ability to be stretched and stretched, but to bounce back. And when we stretch too far and we can't bounce back, that is when we have burnout, or we snap, or we have a breakdown. Another concept is that it's the ability to use positive coping skills, that when we come against challenges, we have ways to cope with it, healthy ways that help us get through and are able to have what's known as the capacity and the courage to learn, and to learn some new capabilities, and even to grow for the better. This is also known as post-traumatic growth. And there's a new term that I now I'm discovering. It's called bounce forward. Instead of bounce back ability, this elasticity, they're saying this doesn't fit for our times. We're not bouncing back. Things are not going to be the same. There's not a lot of going back to as things as they were. We need to be thinking of bouncing forward, very growth oriented, and growing back better. So those are some of the concepts that you will see in the literature and a lot of what is being talked about now. But I want to open us up to be thinking a little bit, and I'd like to invite you to think about, what is your story? What is your experience? Because we can hear about all this and we can learn about it and understand it conceptually, but I want us, in the rest of our time, I want you to be thinking about you. What is your story right now? And honestly, we are on a broad spectrum. We can, each of us here, if we told our stories, we'd be on the spectrum of from not being affected that much, being glad to clean out your garage. Some people say I could finally sleep a little bit more, to, I got the kids at home. Now, I thought it'd be great to integrate my life more, but this is ridiculous. Now where are the boundaries? Some people are working at home out of the ironing closet, and all the way to massive loss, really, really massive loss. People, loss of life, loss of job, loss of income, and a whole lot of other things. And some of the other terms are like reorient. For me, this is about reorienting. It's about a reset, a whole reset for a new way of living. It's rethinking and reimagining. And a lot of people in church leadership are saying we have to rethink and reimagine, like in major ways. For some people, it's about renewal and restoration. What does that look like for me? Recovery and adapting. It's about finding new ways for renewal and restoration. And for other people, they've used the term endurance and having grit and courage, facing a lot of new things. And again, with these storms and these changes, some people are saying it's about just withstanding, learning how to withstand and find ways to just be sustained. And others are saying that, honestly, this concept of surrendering and our weakness is our strength is very helpful, because we can tend to say resilience is, bounce back. Gee, COVID's over now. You can go outside and not wear a mask, and let's just bounce back. And it's not that easy. And for some people, there's a tremendous amount of loss. And it's more about, how do I surrender into this new shifting new normal, whatever that is? And it's really an invitation for me to be resilient, is an invitation to learn what it means to surrender to all of this change. A word that's been really helpful for me is preserved. And this prayer from the Book of Common Prayer: Lord God Almighty and everlasting Father, you have brought me in safety to this new day. Preserve me with your mighty power, that I may not fall into sin, nor be overcome by adversity. And this has been a very meaningful prayer for me. Lord, preserve me to not be overcome by adversity. And this image I like, this botanical image of this plant that has chunks taken out of it, and feels like it's just one thing after another. And, where is this end? How can I still be alive and thriving, and to have chunks of me missing, or feel that there are parts of me that are super challenged, but I could still stay green? And that's the invitation, the scriptural invitation to flourish in Psalm 92, that we will be like palm trees in the house of the Lord, and still be able to have vitality, still be able to somehow have life. And so the invitation for each of us, be thinking about, what is that metaphor for you? And for us not to feel constrained by some of these concepts that make us feel, okay, let's just bounce back now. But your resilience, what would the invitation be for you? What would God call you to? And what words are resonating for you? So I invite you to be thinking about that as you continue in this topic. So resilient leaders in challenging times, what are we facing, and what does that mean? Things are not going to be the same. They're saying, people, really, what is normal? What is the new normal? It's shifting and changing all the time, and we're having to adjust and adapt. We don't have control over these changes, and there's still a lot of uncertainty. A lot of us are not back at our offices, workplaces. Some churches are back meeting, some churches are not. Some people are still trying to figure out and adjust to a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of articles and blogs about, what is the future of the church? What about some of these leaders who are maybe going to have to go by vocational, or what does it look like now to move forward with this? And what are you dealing with? What are the implications for you? What are your fears and stresses and challenges? And what do you need for the journey? We need new things for the journey. My 3-year-old grandson said something the other day, and it's become, honestly, out of the mouth of babes, such a profound phrase. He said, well, sometimes you just have to work with what you got. And he must have heard it on one of his little children's TV shows. And I think how wonderful that he said this. But honestly, we have to work with what we got. And some of us, we have to each find, what is God's plan for our future? What is that mystery unfolding? What do we have to work with? And this is a part of the adjusting and adapting and growing and saying, God, what do we have to work with now? And what is the mystery of your plan unfolding? And so we have to hold this out as leaders. I'm still virtual. My office my shared office up at Mata Dolorosa, where I work, still not available. I'm still virtual. I'm still working I'm in my bedroom right now with a beautiful curtain at the backdrop, sitting on an ottoman at the end of my bed. Yet here I am, presenting professionally. And so what do we have to work with? We have to keep exploring. So as we think about becoming a resilient person, I want us to be considering 3 different pillars that I think are really, really important and really helpful for us to understand the core competencies, some of the character traits, and some of the states of well-being. One is our biblical faith in the Judeo-Christian heritage. There's these wonderful metaphors of trees, the viriditas, this continual greening spirit of God. He's continually regreens and gives life to the earth. And there's stories, there's these amazing biblical stories that and truths that we can draw from. Deep theology. We are designed and created to withstand trials, to build character, to be renewed, to become better, to be sustained and stronger, to be able to rise up. This is part of the theology of our faith. But we integrate that with science and neurobiology. The brain and the body and the mind and the emotions and the spirit, they all work together. We are an integrative being. And we now know with neuroplasticity, we have the ability to be renewed in our mind and for us to be able to have this flexibility, this ability to adapt and change. And then, of course, psychoneuroimmunology. All of this informs us and helps make sense of the biblical theology, and it helps give us practical ways to live it out. And then, of course, inspiring stories. We each have a story. It would be so amazing to hear everybody's story and to be able to inspire one another by what is God showing us and how are we living through challenges, and then to be drawing from other people's stories of how have they discovered and how do they live through being resilient. So one of the fundamental things about resilience is that there are resilient states and resilient traits. And in summary, resilience is a way of being. It's who you are becoming. It's your character, your personality, and your faith. And so when we think of this concept of resilience, it's really about being a resilient person in body, mind, emotions, and socially. And we each have to develop our personalized resilient plan. We are all on a different spectrum. We all come from a different background. We all are facing different things. So there's not one way. I've read a lot of 10 ways, 7 steps, 5 pillars, 3 things. There's a lot of that out there. And I've drawn from a lot of that. But when you look at, I'd read some of the 10 ways like, well, yeah, that's good, but they're missing this. And then there's 5 things. Well, those 5 things, but they're missing this. So you have to discover what for you is going to help you still grow and thrive and to go forward in a new way. Another thing we don't want to miss as we move forward is, what is our takeaway of living through this challenges of the pandemic? I think it's so important for us to consider, what have we learned? And what we learned about what matters most. What can I take with me? What can I eliminate? There's a lot of things that people are saying, I love this reset, press pause. And now it's almost like we've recalibrated to, I can't believe I lived that way. I'm never going back. I'm going to do things differently. And so a part of this moving forward and growing back better is, don't miss the opportunity to say, God, what can you show me? As I move forward here, what is a way for me to really live in a better way? And what is this revealed about me that I need to take a look at? Because there are a lot of still ongoing struggles. There's a lot of aftermath. Some people are saying, yeah, it feels like, oh, things are getting back together. But now, honestly, things are just flaring up. And there's still a lot that we still have to deal with. And so I want to really encourage a lot of self-compassion. A lot of people are still tired. I'm hearing like, I'm still tired, and this multitasking, this way of living, it seems like I shouldn't be this tired. What is this about? But I think, we need to have a lot of compassion. We have gone collectively through a lot of stress and trauma. And we have gone through a lot of uncertainty. And that is traumatic on some level. And it's very stressful. And so have self-compassion if you still feel tired, if you still have struggles and challenges that you're dealing with. There's some people who are frontline workers and people in ministry, people I work with who are saying, I feel now like it's all just falling apart. I felt like I was in crisis mode. I was holding it together. And now I feel like, wow, so it's a lot of self-compassion and asking, what does it look like now? for me? Where do I go from here? What would it look like to grow back better? So let's begin with what are some of the healthy ways to sustain resiliency capacity as a whole person? And I want to begin with this concept that of you as a priority, your life as a priority. We hear this over and over again for Christian leaders. The state you're in is the state you bring. And as my father would say, he's famous saying that, Dr. Chris Adams says all the time, you are a person before you are a pastor or a Christian leader. And so I want to address us personally in terms of what that looks like for our self-care and well-being. And you'll hear this over and over again. Just get the basics down. Sometimes just the eating well and the exercising and the sleeping and having rest, having a good rhythm in your life. And exercising in ways that are restorative. We need to think stress management, recovery. We need to be thinking of how to attend to some of that in our life. And not to forget play. We're seeing a lot now about the importance of spending time in nature. They call it forest bathing out of Japan, all the research out of the benefits of being in nature. Take walks in nature. And then finding a balanced lifestyle. And this is a real challenge for those of us who are working virtual. It was easier to balance that when we had separation of our spaces. And energy management. We're learning a lot now, time management, yes, but honestly, energy management is the hot new thing because it's all about how we're using your energy to keep that balance in your life and for stress recovery. And then boundaries. It's hard to have, the boundaries have shifted and maybe our calibration has shifted. And so we need to really, really think, where have I been stretched too far? Some of us have to, and it's necessity. And then on other ways, I think we have to really reevaluate. Am I, stretching myself too much here? Have I gone over the edge? Something else we're hearing a lot about is the importance of keeping routines, rhythms, and habits. And they're saying now that with so much uncertainty and with this cross of boundaries and this difficulty of balanced living, that it's so important to have something that centers us and that gives us momentum and motivation. And it would have been easy for me to present here in my Pilates pants. And as I spend, a lot of sessions and just, top up, as they say. But I've talked to a lot of people said, enough of that. I'm going to get dressed and I'm actually going to put real, clothes on and also I'm going to have a rhythm to start my day. And have a way to keep some kind of boundaries in the morning, especially morning routines and evening routines. We're hearing a lot about the power of a good morning routine. It sets the tone of your day. And to find a way to do that helps keep you centered and have momentum and motivation. Another thing, a very important factor here is the importance of support to sustain resilience capacity. One of my big pet peeves, besides the whole misuse of wearing a mask in the pandemic, has been this concept of social distancing. Just that from the beginning just did rub me the wrong way. And so these places where I've seen signs, I've been down Laguna and some places where they say physical distancing. And I'm like, yes, that's what it is. It's physical. Keep 6 feet space, physical. But the social, we need social connecting. We have got to have social connections. We cannot do it alone. We need solid relationships for a support, places where we can be known and have a witness to our experience. Because there's power in being known, that I can see that you see me. We have stories, we have challenges, and we need to be seen, and we need to have a witness. We need family, friends, colleagues, mentors. We need people who are safe and who can understand, and we feel that they can understand our story. And we at a place too where it's really helpful to even have a life coach. How do I move forward? And that's a big part of this coaching program that is being developed, that we're working on under the Flourishing in Ministry model, because it's just so powerful and so helpful. And we need people to come alongside us, a life coach to help us move forward and to rethink and reconceptualize, and maybe a spiritual director or a therapist even. For some of the things that have been triggered in us. So in the rest of our time, I want to talk about what the model, the Flourishing in Ministry model, is emphasizing, and that's the self-regulation capacity, and how contemplative spiritual practices are so helpful with us for that. Self-awareness, thought awareness, and then regular spiritual practices and rhythms. So this is the Flourishing Ministry model. For those of you who are not very familiar with it, I encourage you to please go on flourishinginministry.org and look into that. There's a whole brochure of some of the results from the research. But that second quadrant there is the quadrant on resilience. And the resilience is really, in this conceptualizing, is self-regulating capacities, self-awareness, self-reflectivity, and self-control. Very similar to emotional intelligence. I'm not going to get into that too much because my sister, actually, Dr. Sylvia Hart Weber, will be presenting on emotional intelligence next month. So stay tuned for the great teaching she will do on that. But just to touch on this and how helpful this is with resilience, we see that a lot of some of the research and what people are saying now has to do with noticing and paying attention. What are you thinking? What are you feeling? And what are you thinking? And being attuned to having self-awareness to what is going on. We have a whole range of feelings that have been arising in us. We have the extreme of loss and lament, and yet we also are trying so much to balance out all the brokenness with beauty and gratitude. And in some ways, it's been the worst of times, and in some ways, it's the best of times. And so we're trying to balance this. And so there's a lot of primitive emotion that's been triggered: mad, sad, anxious, afraid, and also trying to balance that with being glad and being grateful. And we need to be aware of how are we embodying these emotions, because we do embody our emotions. And how am I acting? How am I being pushed? And so be aware of what is stirring you. What is this complexity of emotion? And notice and pay attention. I started out the whole pandemic in a very dramatic way. I was really triggered with a lot of fear right up front. Mid-March last year, right when the weekend of the initial lockdown, I landed up in the ER and being hospitalized. And I don't watch a lot of bad news, so I didn't get the memo that COVID was coming the way it came. But when I was in the hospital, just very briefly, the sentiment was, COVID is coming, COVID is coming. Everyone, the doctors, the nurses. Then I had a great nurse on the second day. She said to me, COVID is coming. You need to wear a mask. Here, take mine. This is an unused mask, and I'll find another one. We're on rations, but I'll get you another one. And then she said, you've got to get out of here. You've got to get out of here. And she said, oh, they're taking too long to get your paperwork. I'm going to get it myself. I'll be right back. And then she said, there's no one to wheel you out. I'll wheel you myself. You've got to get out of here. So she put me in the wheelchair and she wheeled me out. And she said, stay safe and get follow-ups and don't come back. If you can, just don't come back. COVID's coming. I was like, oh my gosh, COVID's coming. And then I thought, you better get supplies. So I go to Trader Joe's, and wouldn't you know it, absolutely nothing. I've never seen anything like it. no produce, no bread, nothing in the freezer. Did some of you remember that? And I was like, there's no food, there's nothing, COVID's coming, and there's no supplies, there's no toilet paper, I don't have it. And something triggered in me, And I think that each of us can have, we each have our stories, but something triggered in me, and a fear triggered in me that took me months. And even now, every now and again, there's things that'll trigger in me. The scarcity and the deprivation and some of the fear. It was new. I'd never faced that, and it's what is this about? And so we have to really have self-awareness and then self-reflectivity. And some of this is new, and some of it's old things from my childhood, decades of losses and patterns, and mostly unconscious stuff that we now have to deal with. And the big question is, what am I doing that's helping me, or am I doing that's harming me? How am I going to cope with this? What am I doing that is a helpful way of coping? And one of the most important things that we are seeing that we have to be aware of is to think about what you are thinking, to pay attention to your thoughts and your mindset. Because when left to itself, the mind turns to bad thoughts, trivial plans, sad memories, worries about the future, all the what ifs. Disorder and confusion and decay are the default option of the consciousness. We have a negative bias, and we have a primitive limbic brain system that will take us places, that will work with us, hippocampus, and bring back memories. And we will land up having some really, really challenging things to deal with. So think about what you're thinking. What are you choosing to put into your mind? Dr. Edith Eger, who's now in her 90s, she's a psychologist who was a survivor from Nazi Germany, Auschwitz. She's been done some great work on resilience, but she says no one can take from you what you put into your mind. It's not about what happens to you, it's about how you view what happens to you, what you do with it, not to just recover, but to be able to thrive. Everything is an opportunity to discover your strengths. You can only live in the now. The way you think is what you create. You will reinforce whatever you pay the most attention to. Whatever you think about is what grows. So think about your thinking. You have a choice. So we have no control over what happens to us. For the most part, we have no control over the changes, how things are going, the mystery that's unfolding, even in our own lives. But we can pay attention to what we're paying attention to. So this is some of the most, summarizing some of what's most helpful in terms of where do we go from here. And what they're saying now is really helpful in terms of the concept of resilience. And in balancing all this brokenness and all of this challenge, we have to celebrate and create and celebrate the beautiful gift of life. And so we have to think and not get so caught up and spiral down in the what ifs and the negative bias. We have to balance it with celebrating the beautiful gift of life. Blaise Pascal said, in difficult times, carry something beautiful in your heart. And we have to be really intentional about carrying something beautiful in our hearts. And that usually that is the simple things. And a lot of people are finding that in order to balance this and to adjust and cope, we have to go for walks in nature and notice the beauty of nature. Look at the sky and the clouds. It's bread to the eyes. And to notice God's beauty and God's provision and his gift in just the little things of life, and to hold something beautiful in your heart, to wake up with something beautiful and to go to bed with something beautiful. So we need to cultivate healthy, holy thinking. And this is where the power of neuroplasticity comes in, is that we can renew our mindset. God has created us with the capacity to be renewed. And this is neuroplasticity. Our brain can change and can grow. We can see the challenges as opportunities to evaluate, rethink, reimagine. and to ask the question, what can I do with the power of God now? To open to that, and to have the ability to choose an attitude in our response. This is what's called self-regulation, and Dr. Sylvia will get into that next time. The ability to regulate, to be able to choose. That's the power in resilience, is that we're not spiraling down with all this unconscious stuff and all our triggers, and then we're trapped in the fear, and we're trapped in the helplessness, but we have ability to have that neuroplasticity. And a big core of that is meditating on anchoring scriptures. Another thing I've been hearing, like, have anchoring scriptures, promises that you can focus on. I talked to somebody and he said, honestly, this is the only way you can build your faith. Because if you get caught up in all the bad news and everything that's going on, honestly, it doesn't make sense. And you can literally go crazy. I mean, it really you can make yourself go crazy. You have to have ability to be centered on the word, and then the problems will come smaller. It's put in perspective, in eternal perspective. We have to help ourselves keep that eternal perspective. We have to cultivate what's known as the good eye, this resilient, mindful mindset. I've again experienced this myself. Honestly, I would despair if it was not for the goodness of the Lord. And that's why I think there were two songs right in the beginning of COVID that was so helpful. Remember Waymaker and the goodness of God. And we'd hear them play over and over again. And I remember seeing this parking lot full of cars outside of a hospital, and the Waymaker playing, and all these people went to support the frontline workers at a hospital, and they were playing Waymaker. And another time when they're playing Goodness of God. And I remember a time when I play them 3 times a day. I would play the goodness of God. I'd play Waymaker just to feed myself, to build up my confidence and my courage as I waited for the Lord. And so we need to find what is that for us? What is going to help us build up our confidence? And a lot of research now is showing that the importance of gratitude and appreciation. I've given you their website, heartmath.org. They have an exercise called the Appreciative Heart. And gratitude and appreciation is being shown to be one of the primary sources of being able to have a character trait in the state of resilience. Because gratitude and appreciation rewires your brain, and it trains your mind and your body and your emotions for resilience. It's a physiological coherence, they call it. You could actually create a physiological state in your heart and in your body, in your blood pressure, and in your mind. And then it helps you focus and see positive and potential in challenging situations. It helps us bless God in every situation. It helps us look for the good, because we know that praising God is the appropriate response in all of reality. And that's a really challenging invitation. Challenging invitation. So the world is going through difficult times, and they may become more difficult still. All the more reason to be rooted in prayer. And there's a very famous, it's called the Nun Study. They did SPECT imaging on nuns during prayer, and they found that people who intentionally use their minds to train the brain, this prefrontal cortex, to balance that with the limbic brain, the stress center of the brain, through daily prayer and meditation, can literally go from an anxious, fearful mood state to another more peaceful one that can be seen on a brain scan. How amazing and exciting is that? And some of the research shows just as much as 12 minutes of focused, concentrated prayer. Prayer and meditation and mindfulness changes everything. It changes us, it changes our body, it changes and equips us for being able to be resilient. So Christian prayer and mindful and meditation is this amazing neurobiology, along with what would be considered more contemplative kind of practices with meditation and prayer that is more quietening. It helps build this deep character, that changes us, that sustains us, these core resilient traits. It also builds up psychological and spiritual and emotional immunity. We've heard a lot about the importance of our immune system in terms of being equipped to combat COVID, but there's a psychological and spiritual immunity too that these spiritual practices can give us. They help calm and regulate the stress response system. And that's a big part of this, is the whole parasympathetic stress response, the response system, to help us be more resilient and to heal faster and to have it when it's needed. Because some of this, you can't wait until you're in crisis. This is, again, becoming a resilient person. It's building up your immunity. It's having this resource, so it's there for you to be healing and to be equipping you when you need it. And then, of course, it strengthens our freedom to choose our responses, to not live in this reactivity and to live out of the primitive stress response. So just very briefly, I want to encourage you to think about being open to varying prayer practices. So research has shown, especially in Christian leaders, that one of the most important things for resilience is to be open to how God might be inviting you now to meet you in a new way of prayer, a new way of being with Him. I know I experienced some real shifts in my time. I had some invitations to doing some things that were different. Started using more prayer apps and lying quietly and listening and being led in some guided meditations, as opposed to sitting and just reading and bringing in left brain, right brain a little bit more. And I know somebody, a Christian leader, said that he's now realizing it's more helpful for him. He feels called and invited, instead of sitting with, like he said, sitting with my shopping list and my long list of prayer requests. I'm being invited to just be with God, to relax in His goodness with gratitude, and to just seek wisdom and to listen. And so a different way of invitation. And then with meditation, by that we just mean train your mind and your inner being to be still and calm, to do some deep breathing. This all helps manage the anxious thoughts, just Christian meditation and mindfulness. A lot on mindfulness now. You'll hear especially Christian mindfulness, a lot on out of psychology now. In fact, it's really big. Meditation and mindfulness is very connected to emotional intelligence, and the most helpful way for us to learn skills and traits in not being reactive. And mindfulness is just about living in the present moment, being grounded now, feeling safe and secure and loved, and using our senses. At the end of the PowerPoint handout, and hopefully you'll have a PDF available to you, I've listed some resources for you that I have found helpful. And one of them is a book on holy noticing, it's called, on mindfulness and how the neurobiology and the brain works together on that. And then silence and stillness. And you'll hear this a lot. Pete Scazzero talks about this a lot, and Dr. Gary Oliver, and the emotional intelligence intensives, that retreat intensives that he does, and that, Lord willing, will be coming soon again. So keep an eye out for that, to be able to attend that. But the importance of silence and stillness. Be still, just relax and trust and listen, resting in God and letting God come and rest in us. It's a huge, huge part of our ability to develop a core state of resilience. This invitation of a quiet heart and a still mind. I love the scripture. In resting in me and returning to me and resting in quietness and trusting shall be your strength. But you would not. Sometimes we do not. Sometimes we know not how. And so that is the invitation to learn how to have this ability to rest and trust. So what is helping you endure, to believe, and to stay constant? This is all about your story, and I'm giving you some resources here and what research has shown and what has been helpful to me and others. But in times of suffering and challenging, people often don't need further teaching or moral platitudes. And I've realized that we just need endurance, the ability to remain in God's divine presence, the will to believe, and the resolution just stay constant. And sometimes just the ability to breathe out silent prayers for help from the Lord. Because honestly, sometimes they just honor words, and sometimes we don't know. We don't know what to do. We don't know what's next. And we don't even know what we need. And so we have to look to the Lord and get guidance from him. And this scripture has been really helpful for me and helpful for many others. I've heard them say the scripture has been helpful. Do not fear. I will be with you. And when you get that down to a breath prayer or a prayer of the heart, this is something that has been the prayer of the heart for many of us. God, be with me. Be with me. Be with me. And Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on all of us. Have mercy on all of us. So before we transition into our time of sharing and discussion, I'd like to just take a minute for you to just think about what would be a prayer of your heart right now. What is something that you feel God inviting you to, or that you find yourself just deep from your heart calling out to the Lord? And so just be thinking about that as we transition.
All right, Freddie, I'm not sure you've been getting some questions through the chat. I'll hand it off to you this time.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Catherine. Thank you for sharing so much for us to meditate and process and reflect on. For our audience, just so they're aware, Catherine and I were in a group coaching for a few months and really enjoyed just the conversation and really was ministered by her in different ways. I want to start off with, as you were kind of sharing the experience of being in the, going to the hospital before COVID came, I realized I was like clenching my teeth because I was bringing back, to kind of those experiences of anxiety and, what's going to happen, what are we going to do? And thank you for sharing that story. About how it took months to really think about that and name that. And I have this sense that a lot of us, have gone through different experiences. So that's quickly for me, I've done 3 weddings and 2 funerals, 2 untimely funerals, like within the last year. So I'm still, reflecting a lot about that, and so when I saw the image of the plant, right, and the piece of the plant being gone, I thought, yeah, there's pieces of me that are gone that I need to kind of do some self-care and think about. So this question, Catherine, is what helped you kind of process and reflect on kind of that particular experience and going forward? What were some key moments or things that helped you kind of acknowledge that, name that, reflect on that, do kind of the self-care work about that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so You know, it comes down to managing stress, basically managing the stress and fear center that is triggered in us in different ways. And I think in the normal, you know, cycle of life, it comes and it goes. But when we have something so dramatic flooding us, and it's a new experience. And so I actually had to take some time out. And I had to spend, I took a time out and I told people I was working with, you know, I'm just not available for a month or so. And I spent a lot of time in the Word. I spent a lot of time listening to meditations, and I learned a whole new importance of of this concept of meditation and prayer in a contemplative way. I had to allow the Word and my being to be able to calm down and to engage my mind and my brain and the Word to be able to address this fear center. And I had to spend time to really self-reflect. And I had to take some of that silence and that time out. You can't do it a little bit here in between on your lunch break.
No, thank you for that. The importance of time and spending in the Word and meditation.
Mm-hmm.
What, you know, to follow that up, you know, you talked about self-compassion, right? Like, what have we learned, and the importance of self-compassion. And I think it's related to one of the questions coming here in the chat. You know, why is it so hard for us as ministers to have self-compassion for ourselves? And then kind of to follow up a question here on the chat is, what if we can't afford time to take out to do some of these activities that you've been sharing about?
Well, first of all, as Christian leaders, we are so gifted at taking care of others, being attuned to others, over functioning. It's a strange thing about we do it so well for everybody else, and yet we tend to not be attuned, and we tend not to take self-leadership. And so this is really about self-leadership, and it's really about taking a look at, you know, what is it about me that is disconnected, and my calibration is off. And so that really is a journey, I think, for all Christian leaders to really work on, because we feel guilty, we feel we're taking extra time, we're indulging, it's about those people, I'm dying to myself, and I'm, you know, all of that mentality. And so we, and this is what the whole Flourishing in Ministry coaching program is about too, is to help us realize that the state you're in is the state you bring. The most important thing that you can bring as a leader is your own, you know, transformed self. That's Ruth Haley Barton's quote. And so that part of it is, and having that self-awareness and that self-compassion is so important. Secondly, I don't have time for it. This is where I think we have to see the importance. Once we see how important it is for our own well-being and self-leadership, you realize there is time for it. One of the things that changed for me is I started using the mornings and the evenings differently. We all get up in the morning, we all go to sleep at night, and we have a little bit of time on how we use that. Your morning ritual is huge. And when I teach on the Rule of Life, I teach about the importance of morning rituals, and we're seeing a lot are coming out now about it. You have time in the morning. You have the choice of when you go to bed, what time and how you spend that time. You have a choice about when you wake up and how you spend that time. I was led to, instead of getting up and going down and sitting and reading all my, you know, I have 6 journals and piles of stuff and whatnot. I was led to stay in bed for 1 hour, stay in bed and listen to, I have 2 particular apps that I listen to, and I put them in there, Lectio 365 and Pray As You Go. I listen to those, and then I do 20 minutes of of silent prayer and meditation. And the Lord led me, don't even get out of bed. Don't even get up. Literally rest, lie and rest. We all have a choice on how we can use our time. And so I think in the evenings, you can sit and watch rubbish TV and all the bad news and go and surf on your iPad, or you can use that time to help yourself get ready for a good night's sleep and use that time. So just be creative and see how the Lord would lead you. But there's always time.
Yeah, there always is time. So, we're up almost to our time ending here. Catherine, what would be like in 30 seconds? What I know we can't do it in 30 seconds, but what would be one thing you would tell our audience here? As one step they can take in starting kind of in this journey. What would be a word of encouragement for you, for our audience?
My word of encouragement is be kind to yourself, and listen to your life. Listen to what your body's telling you, what your heart is telling you. Be quiet enough to listen to what the Spirit is telling you, how the Spirit is leading you. And we're all on the spectrum of our experiences, but chances are it's been a hard time collectively. Just watching our what's been going around us has been vicarious trauma. But just be kind to yourself and listen to your life and be attuned to how the Lord might be leading you and what that might look like for you to grow forward, and what the Lord might have for you to still thrive, and mysteries unfolding. And let's be attuned to that and excited for the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living.
Amen. Amen.
So
thank you so much, Catherine. I'm gonna
Yeah.
hand it off to Chris Neal.
Would you all join me in thanking Catherine for sharing her expertise and
thank
research
you.
with us to cultivate resilience in all of us. As she mentioned, next month we'll be together again on May 20th at 10 a.m. Pacific time, where her sister and fellow scholar, Dr. Sylvia Hart Weber, will be sharing about how to cultivate emotional intelligence, as that's a key part about cultivating resilience. And also stay tuned in the coming months as we launch our Flourishing in Ministry coaching, where you actually could be coached by our speaker this morning, as well as many other people on the call. So we'll have individual coaching for those who like private coaching time, as well as group coaching for those who are looking for a community of practice. As well as I know a number of you on the call have your own network. You're a denominational leader, you're a network leader, and you may want to be interested in getting certified as a Flourishing Ministry coach yourself, which will be launching this fall. So stay tuned, and thanks so much for being with us. In closing, let me offer this benediction. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Receive that word and go in peace today. Thanks, sisters and brothers.
Bless you all. Thank you. Have a wonderful day. Lord be with you.